Welcome, everyone. My name is Doug, and I'll be the host for today's class. We're here with Guy Finley. Today is January 4th, 2026, and we're glad that you're able to join us today. I'm here in Southern Oregon with a group of students, and Guy is in Florida with another group of students, and we're all here to explore these truths together with Guy. So welcome again. If you have any questions or any problems technically, you can go to your question box and go to webinar or the chat boxes in the other Facebook or YouTube, whichever platform you're on. So I think if you haven't been here before, Guy will give about a 60-minute talk. It will take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for our Q&A time where you can respond directly to Guy, either through the written, you can write us in a question or comment, or you can talk directly to Guy if you're on GoToWebinar. So do take advantage of that and stay with us as long as you can. And by the way, all these talks are recorded, so if you can't stay the whole time, you can always go back to it, or you can come back to it as many times as you want as well. All these talks are archived. So welcome. So let's bring on Guy, Katie, and we'll get started. Would you like me to read the topic and key lesson?
Yes, please.
All right. Why a new life can only begin in a new place within you. And here's the key lesson. Revelation is not a product of time. Rather, it is the sudden appearance of an impersonal, timeless awareness within us. These aha moments do not provide intellectual answers. Rather, they provide by grace, a glimpse of a higher order of awareness whose peace is inseparable from the divine intelligence it permeates. All right, Guy, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Doug. So I want to just touch on a little truth that's hidden inside of this initial key lesson, so bear with me. The key lesson speaks of this idea that within every moment there exists not just that which has created it, but that which understands the purpose of its existence. It also alludes to this idea that in that ceaseless creation, in the revelation of what we would call the perfect moment in the beginning, if you will, that it's always new. And I take pains to just point out this small idea so that you can hopefully follow what I want to share with you today. Which requires, in one respect, that our time together, every time together actually, the more I see it as clearly as I do, is meant to be a kind of active contemplation on the part of the people who are listening in. The purpose of contemplation of any real meditation, which is never intellectual in basis, is to give an individual, according to their willingness, what we could simply call an aha moment, an epiphany. An epiphany, a true epiphany, is the simultaneous glimpse of the opposites, where a person intuits, if not actually sees, that all of these things that we look around and see in part. I see this part, I see that part, I see your part in my life, I see how I participate in that relationship. So that a real aha moment is the understanding that this is all taking place in a holiness that is greater than the sum of its parts. That's what an epiphany is the realization that I am a part of something greater than the self that wants to analyze or think about it. And that the real beauty of life, even at the simplest level, when you see something beautiful, you listen to beautiful music. In such moments, there is a realization, because one gives oneself over to not just what one is listening to, but to the listener, that in fact, these are not separate parts. They're not apart from each other. Every bit of pain that you and I have in our life is because of a nature that has divided this life up into me and you, this and them, this and that. And the real epiphany is that there is no separate this and that. Because in the realization of that is the end of the sense of separation, and with the end of separation, we begin to free ourselves from the dependency that is created in this constant state of fear of being separate and apart from life, with all of its desperation, I might add. So I want to look at ideas with you to help bring about what we might call an epiphany, what we might call a sudden, oh, wow, I didn't see it like that before, meaning I only saw this part and I saw that part, but I never saw that they were participants themselves in something that was greater than their individual role, but that collectively they produced a different kind of reality in which suddenly I was no longer afraid and separate and worried. Instead, I was free. Because I wasn't looking at life and everyone in it as if they were something different than I, therefore clinging to this and fearing that and trying to hold on to this and trying to keep that at bay. Life like that isn't life at all. That's how we live now, in a constant state of dependency that we don't realize. And that's really what I want to address in this talk with you today, so that we can actually begin to understand what it would mean to be able to have a fresh start in life, a real new start. And the topic says that if you want a real new start, you have to start in a new place. And I know that you think otherwise, but you don't know what a new place is. All day long, you're thinking of a new place, a new power, a new possession, a new relationship. And nothing that you can think about is new. Nothing. In fact, to the contrary, everything that you think about, it's not you thinking, it's something deriving an identity from the consideration of that relationship, of that person, or that even that problem. I didn't go too far too fast, did I? No. Lie to me. So that's where I want to start. I want to look at what is it that's keeping us from making a new start. How many times in your life have you said, that's it, I'm making a new start? And as many times as you have identified what that new start is, you have had the startling revelation, the realization that, oh my God, that wasn't a new start at all. That was really the continuation of something I didn't know that I was complicit in. And then I find myself at that place, I go, oh no. And then regret rushes in. We're going to look at what I think yesterday, talked about this chain reaction, and how this chain reaction cannot be separated from the patterns that are created as we identify with all this thought and reaction that we have. So we're going to look together not only at how we can begin to make a real start by finding the real place to start in, but why the pattern goes on and on and on in our lives. You should be so sick of being shocked by how asleep you are that one day you actually realize, I wonder what it is that keeps me running around in this circle, that as I take the step into it, I believe I'm going someplace new. So that's what we're going to look at, this pattern behind painful moments, and how it persists and produces not new beginnings for us, but the illusion of a new start that always turns out to be a startling revelation. I didn't start at all in a way that's new. So, nice deep breath, and let's look at this together. We are always in one way or another trying to sort out what went wrong with our plan to start over, or how we can make a new start given the plan we made went to hell in a handbasket. This is what thought is basically wrapped up in, what these patterns are and what these chain reactions are. Because what happens? There's a sudden, oh no, whatever it might be, at the simplest level. And I go as slow as I possibly can because I'm going to go to great pains, hopefully not your pain, to show you something about it. Where does every unwanted pattern, every chain reaction begin that returns us to the same place where we were before, other than with these two words, oh no. Everything old starts with oh no, because oh no belongs to what is old. But the sensation of oh no feels new because I'm temporarily identified with what I'm saying oh no about, and though I don't believe it's true, I love the feeling of oh no, because it confirms that there is something that I should have had, I should have kept, that shouldn't have changed, and God, it did, oh no, which proves at once it shouldn't have happened, and more significantly, it proves that my experience of that moment is valid. That not wanting that moment is a valid feeling, and I should honor it by doing whatever that consciousness is that has that feeling tells me to investigate, to look into, in order to never have to meet a moment like that again as long as I live. Isn't that what's behind oh no? Where the greater the resistance to our experience, the more desperate becomes our search for solutions to that suffering. Can you see that with me? Yes. And the thing is, the pattern seems so obvious, and it will one day. You as you work, you'll look and you'll think talk about a gorilla on my back, talk about an elephant in the room. How do I not see what is right in front of me? And do you know why you don't see what's right in front of you? Because you're only looking at what's right in front of you and not at the nature that has created the meaning of what it's looking at. That's why you can't see what's right in front of you, because it's closer than your face. You've heard that expression? You can't see your own face? You can't see what's right in front of you because all you're looking at is what's right in front of you and not what is looking at it. There's always a division. There's always opposites we don't know exist. I'm just having a little epiphany as I'm speaking. Certain things I would say, and then I realize that if I said it, that I would have to take an hour just to explain what I said, and that's not going to work. Let's bring up the second key lesson so that we can look at this together. This idea, oh my God, here comes this disturbance. And we see something outside of ourselves that tells us what it is. It reads as follows. What we usually call a disturbance in the present moment does not actually belong to the present moment itself, any more than an echo belongs to the voice that gives rise to it. Is the echo the voice that gives rise to it? No. The echo is an effect of the voice. The disturbance that we experience in the moment is an effect of a nature that believes the disturbance shouldn't be there because it already knows what should be there, and that ain't it. And so I'm disturbed by not the moment itself, but rather by what it is that I knew shouldn't take place in that moment. That ought not be that. Look, an echo seems immediate, doesn't it? We can even hear a tiny bit of echo in the room here. An echo seems immediate, and it's convincing, isn't it? Echo, voice, a single thing that you can't, how do I say, that the only connection is what I see as a seamless relationship between them. But the seamless relationship in them that we see is secondary. The disturbance that we experience in a moment is secondary to the actual moment we blame for the disturbance. The disturbance is an effect. It is a response after the fact. And the fact of the moment is that every moment is a moment of creation. So that the disturbance we feel that we don't think is part of creation itself, but rather that something is interfering with what I have created that I call my life, all my attachments, my dependencies, and all the rest of that. Do you understand? Now we're going to look at something so deep. I'm going to go as slow as I can so it can fall on you properly. So in that way, we react to a disturbance, seeing it, if you will, as the problem. But the real problem is not the moment as it is. The moment itself is not the problem. I know you think it is, but the real disturbance is the experience of who and what we are in that moment. That's the disturbance. The disturbance is who and what I am in the moment. And the disturbance is because I don't want that moment to be the way it is. That's the disturbance. Not what took place, but that I don't want to be the one in the moment experiencing that. So basically the disturbance is I don't want to experience myself. Can you see it at all? It's not what you said, not what happened. The disturbance is that I don't want the experience of what happened. Because you can't separate the experience of what happened from what happened. They don't exist without each other. This is what was meant when Buddha said, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there, does it make a sound? Mutual dependency. What I don't want doesn't exist without the me that doesn't want it, which means what I don't want is in fact an expression of the revelation of a nature that is absolutely sure this experience of myself ought not be this way. How in the name of God can a person believe that the experience they have shouldn't be the experience they're having? Where does lunacy like that come from? Because isn't that it? I don't want this experience. Why? I don't have to answer you why. It's evident. It's wrong. So let me understand this. All of life that brought together this moment in which there you are and something has happened, it's wrong and you're right. That's right. That's 100% right. Because I don't want the experience of myself. Now, I could stop the talk right there, and maybe I should, because if you can see it, you go, oh my God. I think I'm rejecting the condition. I'm not rejecting the condition. I'm not resisting the condition. I'm resisting my experience of the condition that doesn't exist without the condition by the grace of God that is showing me where this dependency, this chain reaction, and this pattern is produced and is kept in place. Because if I can see this, make the leap, will you? Lie to me. Oh, no wonder my life keeps repeating itself. Because most of my life is not wanting the experience of myself. Oh, God. And of course, the reason that we don't want to know that, because I don't know what else to have. In fact, I don't want the experience I'm having right now listening to you, sir. Because you're confusing me. No, I'm not confusing you. I'm showing you a mind that can only look at one side or the other and then determine what it is according to what it is attributed that moment to. So, much along the lines of what I spoke about last week or just the week before, to us, it's absolutely natural to not want the moment. That's natural. So that means it's natural to who I am to be negative. Come on, am I making this stuff up? It's natural to not want this moment, which means it's natural for me to be identified with not wanting who you are, not wanting what I am in that moment, not wanting anything to do with any part of it. Why? Because I'm filled with this painful resistance. I have all this resistance. Now, I didn't know that I have resistance to, and then you fill in the blanks. from the least to the greatest? Because the least and the greatest are made least and greatest by the extent of my resistance to the moment they appear in. Because without the moment appearing as it does, over which I have no control. Do any of you have control over this moment? See, you said that way too fast. Well, then why are you negative? How can I get negative without feeling like something has taken control of my life? I can't. I'm negative because I'm resisting seeing that something has come in and it feels like I'm losing control. It seems as if something has taken away my power, which is really big in these days. We could change the whole of this work and actually, instead of being a nonprofit that really is not profitable, a truly profitable foundation by selling the illusion of power, because that's what people want. I want power to get rid of the experience I don't want, because the experience I don't want is produced by people who don't do what I want, by moments that I should be in control of, and I'm not. What we're looking at here is totally different than this. We're looking at the fact that life itself can't be disturbed. I'm asking you to see it. Can life be disturbed? Or is, for instance, whatever the disturbance is, I live on a bay. Yesterday it was the coolest thing. I always see something different in the bay. Yesterday there was a wave. I've never seen a wave in the bay. It was an energetic pattern. It actually created a little wave, and the little wave was moving. And as the little wave moved, you could actually see that all that was happening was something had disturbed the surface, and that as it disturbed the surface, you wouldn't even know the wave was there unless the surface were completely flat in that moment. And so that in that split second, that wave is already settled as it moves. The energy that creates the wave settles the moment that it moves the water. Then that energy is in another place in that water, and the water that was seemingly disturbed before is now back to its natural place. So everything is part of a movement in which so-called disturbance isn't really disturbance at all. It's an expression of the possibility of the body in which it reveals itself. Do you follow that? So our conclusion is that something has disturbed us. And what has disturbed us needs to be resolved. And the minute that I'm sure of how I resolve or need to resolve that particular problem, what comes up in that moment? First, I have a conclusion I didn't know I had, that shouldn't have happened. Really what it's saying is I have a conclusion that I shouldn't have to experience anything like that at all. Because I don't want that experience. Why? Because that's not how life is meant to be. How do you know how life is meant to be? I just do. You never work through it. I just know. Well, good. So your knowledge is the source of an eternal conflict that you have with everything that runs contrary to what you think life should be. Well, now that you put it that way, maybe. So life isn't disturbed itself. Bring up the second key lesson, please. I mean, no, we did the second key lesson. My apologies. So, what happens in the moment where I have this disturbing experience? What happens? What? Resistance? Yeah. When we know that, we said that that's part of what drives this reincarnation, this chain reaction, these patterns. Resistance, in short. You start with not wanting. What are you going to create? What does not wanting create? Does not wanting create something new? No. What happens in the moment where I have an experience I don't want is there is a very strong, sudden desire to resolve the condition I believe is responsible for it. Could be anything. You said something, my solution comes out of my desire. Your solutions to bring an end to whatever is troubling you comes out of a desire that says you should be able to not have this. Here's what you need to do to never have it again. Have you ever said to yourself, I did many times in my life, especially the first time my heart got broken. Do you remember that? How many times have you said something like this? I know somebody who says it every day. I will never go through that again. As long as I live, I will never go through that again. And I always point out to my friend, what are you going through right now when you say you will never go through that again? You're going through the very thing that you don't want to go through again. In fact, every time you have something in you that says never, never, ever again, you are ensuring, because you are creating a pattern that will produce, through that resistance, the very thing that you don't want to experience over and over again. So there's this strong resolution to get the situation fixed. Now, the resolution to fix a problem, where does that come from? Where you and I both know 100 million times we have come up with an answer to the suffering we're in, have we not? And that suffering and the answer to it comes out of a desire to free ourselves. And where do I find exactly what I need in order to bring that desire to life so that I never again have to go through a situation, the experience of myself again? Where do I find the solution to my pain? I find it in this immense mind of mine. I find it in this warehouse of possibilities. Because all it has to do is exactly what it does. It starts to analyze, starts to go through the iterations of whatever that caused that torment. And as it analyzes it, it begins to do what? Well, I can see there are choices that I need to make here. And so now, from desire to resolution to the reality necessary to make things great, I am now quite sure, and this is please, quite sure that I know what to do to bring an end to the disturbance. I'm going to get more of this. I'm never going to have that again. I'm going to see to this. I'm going to make a new plan. Now, is that not a pattern? So let's be clear. I have stepped into a pattern that this unconscious nature has made in order to escape what took place as a result of the pattern before. Can a pattern ever find what is new? Or is a pattern itself, by definition, the product of something that began in time and continues itself in time? And so you could say that one definition of insanity would be what? Not just repeating something that never worked the first time, but looking to a pattern to find a fresh new beginning. So that means if I could be even a little bit aware of the fact of this pattern, at least I would have a small hand up on what's going on in that moment. I could suspect, wait a minute, here's the problem. You see, when you're in the throes of the new plan, the new whatever, it feels really good. Because I have a future. Now, can you see that the future you imagine is part of the pattern where you run into the fact the future you imagine didn't pan out? So it's still part of a pattern. Anything you imagine isn't just part of the pattern, it's part of what produces it. So here's something that we rarely notice, and I want you to notice this. The only answers available to us in the moment when we're confronted with some kind of discomfort, which we're talking about, begins with this search for relief. And the only place I know to search for this relief belongs to a nature that has told me 100 million times, get through this. Because if you get through this, you'll be in a place that's fresh and you can start there. Please. So my new life always starts not where I am, and certainly not within what I am. The fresh start to me belongs to a sense of myself that is spontaneously generated as I don't want the sense of myself. When do I go looking for a new sense of myself in some new condition that I imagine? When do I go looking for a new sense of myself? When I'm happy? No, I go looking for a new sense of myself through a new set of conditions that I imagine. And as I imagine the condition, I experience temporarily a new sense of self. And it's great. I go have a glass of wine. Here's to our 10 million, 100 billion people. Here's to the new year. 10, 9, 8, 7. And what we love, until a certain point, I don't know if you've reached the age yet. You should have when you were 8, but I can't, that's not fair to say. At what age did you start to suspect that the whole idea of New Year's was just a way in which you could kiss somebody, have a drink, and forget the problems of the year before? I'm not being cynical. I'm just asking to see whether it's true. So I have a temporary sense of relief and safety, all born out of what? Experiencing the positive effect of a pattern. Because the pattern is, don't want this experience. Here's how I get rid of this experience. Here's how I will experience the moment to come. And then the ensuing sense of safety and security, because I'm now living in an equally imagined world produced by an equally created pattern that ultimately proves itself to be, listen, a certain kind of prison. And I've been leading to this. Oh my God. Not that experience again. Not that feeling like I've got to prove myself again. I can't take it. Not that experience of I stand to lose something significant here. I must do something. Not the experience of I wonder what he's going to think of me. I wonder what she's going to do. I wonder what that means. Oh my God. Can you experience for a split second what it would be like as a human being not to fear the experience of what you tell yourself something means? Because where's the pain in that experience other than what you have generated as being the suffering inherent in it? What if you could never again have to think to yourself, I wonder what that means? Because isn't that part of the pattern? I wonder what that means. Now I who asked the question didn't know, but I who appears spontaneously on the flip side of that lopsided brain suddenly goes, I know what it means. And then immediately, thank God you showed up. Talk about psychosis. I wonder what that means. Oh, and I go, thank God, now I know. What do you know? I'll tell you what you don't know. You don't know that you are watching opposites weave a pattern that ensures you remain a prisoner of the nature that creates it and the reincarnation, the reoccurrence inherent in it. We're putting things together. Are we putting things together? So this idea, if I can only put the right thoughts together in the right order, isn't that what a lot of our mind does? Our mind starts to try to put right thoughts in the right order, and then it starts to realize that there's a little bit of pain. The consequence of these right thoughts, I didn't consider that. I'm going to make a little left turn. And then you make a little left turn, and you go down that road of thought for a little bit, and suddenly you realize, well, that kind of dead ends there, because that might happen if I actually take that step. And this is what we do. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The dynamic creates, without understanding it, big transition, an intermediate and long-term sense of dependency. Try to see this. What do you mean, intermediate and long-term sense of dependency? Because as my mind creates an answer, isn't that what it does, a path? In the very moment that my mind creates a path to bring an end to my pain, I have now become dependent on that path and its fulfillment in order to produce the end of not wanting to be myself. So now I want to be myself because myself has a plan and a promised peace. And then I don't know that the self that I'm identified with is inseparable from the self I don't want to be. I have no idea that they go together. And I actually become dependent and fearful of anything that threatens the time to come that I'm going to finally be free, that I'll shake off whatever this experience of myself is. So I've actually become dependent on another image, creating another sense of time, and my dependency doesn't go away. And what we're looking at here, if we're looking at it all together, is that what is this reincarnation, this reliving of my nature, other than my unseen dependency on how to escape it and what I feel like when I imagine it? Still with me? Yes. So here's a big transition. What if the disturbance that drives the pattern, that produces the dependency on the idea of protecting whatever I don't want this experience of myself again. What if that disturbance was never meant to be answered by the unconscious nature that's responsible for its creation? Let's just tear that apart. If I actually knew that my nature was responsible for this dependency that I have on you treating me a certain way, do you think people should treat you a certain way? Do you think moments shouldn't be the way they are? Can you know that a person or a moment shouldn't be the way it is unless you already know prior to that unfolding how it should be? So my mind, without me having any aware of it, has decided that this disturbance is responsible for this experience. When the disturbance isn't responsible for the experience is creating the disturbance and driving it through a loop that cannot be escaped, because the nature that experiences never changes. That's why we always have to start in the right place, but never do. Because if you start in the wrong place, which is what? In the experience of not wanting my life to go on as it is, of not wanting you, this, them, and that to be as it. I don't know how to say. I don't want to be me. Exactly the opposite. I gotta be me. It's 100% the opposite of old Frank Sinatra. It's 100. No, I don't. If I see beyond the shadow of a doubt that the experience of myself can't be other than it is in that moment, then at least in that moment, I'm open to recognizing the task then can't be to change what I blame for the experience. The task has to be to investigate the nature that produces the experience of not wanting myself over and over again. I must investigate the self that doesn't want to be. And that's not difficult to do. Once you understand, every time that experience comes up, what does it leave me with doing? Well, as a rule, I just jump into the pattern. I just jump into the process of figuring out how not to have that again. But if I really see the case of that, do I be like tying an anchor to yourself and jumping off a boat and hoping you'll float to shore? I'm not going to do that anymore. What am I left with? I don't know. I don't know. I'm left with unknowing. And I can't be moved out of unknowing, because life itself moved me into the epiphany that I thought I knew and don't, that I thought the action was this, but it wasn't. So that the action and the thought and the plan, every last part of it, is revealed. The more clear it is that I don't know, the more obvious becomes the revelation of something that says, yes, you do. You do. Look at you suffer. Look how exciting tomorrow is. And when you see that enough times, you're left in this new, you're left in the new place where new beginnings are part of it. Because you've begun to see through the dependency. Try to see this. How can a mind be dependent on itself? How can a mind responsible for all the misery that it generates through becoming identified with whatever it does, how can it then believe that if it can identify with something new, it's the same as escaping the pain of attachment? Can it? So the question is, what if in these moments where this problem comes along, what if instead of just looking at the problem and blaming the pain on the problem, or just experiencing myself who doesn't want it. Now, this requires real attention here. This is the fundamental division that keeps the pattern going, that keeps us a prisoner of the past. My mind does one of two things, and it vacillates back and forth almost seamlessly. First, a moment comes. Instantaneous, instantaneous analysis, instantaneous, that's what's wrong. You, this, them, that. Analysis. Out of analysis and clarification of the conflict, a desire comes that tells me here's what I need to do to change that condition, and then I'll be free. But that's not the end of it. The mind doesn't just look at the condition that it doesn't want, because the condition it doesn't want doesn't exist without the self that doesn't want it. So I'm never fully present to the fact that my mind first goes to what I don't want, and that it can't have what it doesn't want without the self and the experience of myself not wanting it. So there's the outside, so to speak, what I don't want, and then there's the inside, the experience of not wanting. And my mind, back and forth, never sees. They don't exist without each other. Can you have an experience you don't want without the condition the mind blames for it? And can you have a condition you don't want without the experience of not wanting it? No, you can't. But I'm here and there. I'm in this and then I'm in that. And I don't realize that this and that aren't separate. Are you following me? So there's I don't know when it happens. But one day you just run out of things to hate. You just run out of the wish to have an enemy. Just run out of it. You can't do it on your own. But it is connected to a certain awareness of a kind of pain that comes with always having that outside of you as the problem. Because I've had that all my life. And I've had it with that. I've had it with that. But the me that's had it with that actually believes that it's separate from what it's had it with. It does. So for a moment now, I have a whole new identity where I'm going to dismiss myself from life. I'm going to climb a mountain, count pomegranate seeds. I'm going to do everything. But the problem is that no matter where I go, there's still an experience of myself that seems to go with me that I don't want. So I look out at life and I see one opposite at a time. Transition now, please. I see that which bothers me. I don't see that which is bothered in me. I see that which troubles me. I don't see that which is troubled. Or all I know is that I'm troubled. And I hate the experience. And my mind, the second that well, of course you do. Look at that. And now I'm looking at that. I have no awareness of the self that's looking at it. I just don't want the experience of looking at that. Back and forth, almost like a sort of a dark Tao, a sort of a dark yin and yang in this constant circle, one replacing the other. That's the point, please. One replaces the other. Can you see it? But there is something that appears in the same moment of what I don't want. There is something that is there in the same moment as the experience of myself that I don't want. Because if I've presented this at all, you're beginning to see that what I call the experience I don't want cannot be separated from the experience of the self that doesn't want it. It's not double talk. They are related. Can you see that? In that moment, all I see is one side or the other. But there exists in that moment a kind of light in which everything in play in that moment is revealed. It's often referred to as a witness, an impersonal awareness. The impersonal awareness, now go with me, it can see, you know what, that thing that's bothering me, what you said, my past, what I just lost, I can see pretty clearly that that is what I blame. But that I blame doesn't exist without me being sure that this suffering is a result of it. So I repeat this idea that in that moment there is something that can see, you know what? Changing that doesn't really change anything. I've made 10,000 changes of that, haven't you? I've made 10,000 changes just laying in bed in a restless mind. Changing that doesn't change. Well, then therefore I have to change my experience. I'm going to change my nature. And so I think to myself, well, I'm going to change my nature. That's what I have to do. And when I decide I have to change my nature, please listen. I must create something that changes it. The minute that I think I don't want this experience anymore, because now I understand it's spiritual and it's deep, in order for me to change this experience, my mind comes up with that which is required in order to make the change. That's how you got sold the idea of a time to come in some heaven where you're going. The whole idea that somehow I'll escape this experience because I'll have that experience. The only difference is instead of the experience of a bad business deal and the me that got burned in it, now there's me that's burning and escaping into a world where I'll never feel the heat again. They're the same set of opposites. And the consciousness that generates it is the problem, not the individual sides of a divided mind that hides in the time to come and runs from the self that doesn't want it. Please? But something else is there. I go before you to make the crooked places straight is the same as saying, I go before you to show you that the opposites are not opposites the way you think they are. I want you to see, Guy, that this idea that that is the source of your suffering doesn't exist without the suffering clinging to whatever it is that's producing that. You can't suffer over that without clinging to something that says it shouldn't be there. And it's not what's there that's causing the suffering, it's the clinging. And the clinging belongs to the pattern maker that produced it to begin with. Because in every pattern that is continuous, there is an attachment to it. You've heard it said, maybe you don't understand why it is you love your suffering. I don't love my suffering. No, you don't love suffering, but you love the pattern that produces it. If I'm attached to something and something threatens the pattern, do I suffer? So am I suffering the pattern that's threatened, or am I suffering because I'm attached to the pattern and I'm actually dependent on that sense of myself that's inseparable from the pattern? Can you not see it? So that the sense of self that's suffering produced the thing that it produced its own dependency. It creates dependency so that it can suffer when what it is dependent on is threatened. Because once it's threatened, then it can create something new dependent on. Please, do you see the pattern? I do try to get across to you ideas so that you can see what we're looking at. One side, something acts on me. I'm beginning to suspect that what is actually acting on me, please, don't you always know what's acting on you? Well, now I'm saying, well, maybe I don't know what's acting on me. Because my mind's always told me what's acting on me is you. What's acting on is this. My mind says, yeah, that's it. But now I'm beginning to say, well, wait a minute, maybe I don't really know what's acting on me. What arrogance, by the way. What absolute arrogance to believe that you know what's acting on you. The whole of creation brought about a moment in which you have this life, an existence. And you're sure, in spite of the fact of all the failures of trying to prove to yourself that you can protect yourself, you're sure 100% what's acting on you. You can't have a clue what's acting on you. Do you want to know every experience you don't want is because you know what's acting on you? But the flip side is the experience I do want because I do know what's acting on me. What's acting on me is this good fortune. I got this dough. What's acting on is good fortune. She said she loves me. Oh, that's what's acting on me. No, what's acting on you in that moment is a nature that has decided it's going to create dependency on what you call your good fortune, so that at heartbeat you can then go, I don't want the experience of that being taken away from me. It was never yours to begin with. It was never yours to begin with. We're so sure that we own stuff. It's crazy. I own how you treat me. Please, I own the weather. I know how it's, I own it. How do you know you own it? Because I suffer terribly when it's not the right weather. I suffer terribly when life doesn't give me the experience I don't want. And I never think to myself, I'm suffering over the experience I don't want because I've already clinging to and attached to an experience I do want. Do you see what we're trying to do? We're trying to bring these opposites to where you can see them clearly for a split second, so you can begin to suspect in this moment where you're sure you know what's wrong. You don't know what's wrong. And you don't know what's wrong because you don't know the consciousness inside of you that's placing all of your attention on something outside of you to prove, listen, to validate the victim that it is in that moment. Is it really a victim? Or is it a victim of an attachment that it formed, whether it wanted or didn't want in a moment? That's not the important thing. This is a terrible world. You don't know yet how fallen it is. I should use that word instead of terrible. How deceptive. Not the world. Do you think to yourself, the world is so deceptive? Come on, honestly. Yes, it is a deceptive world. No, the world, can a shadow deceive a flame of a candle? Imagine here's a candle flame. Here comes a shadow. Oh God, it's deceptive. Or does its very existence dismiss anything that would come into it of a shadow nature? This is what we're meant to live from. Let me keep going here because I got other stuff to go. So, I want to make a new start. How do I make a new start? Transition, deep breath. I make a new start by realizing that what I call that moment and the experience of it really isn't that moment alone. Because for me, that's how new starts begin, by changing my relationship to that moment. I'm never going to go through that again. I'm going to make a new moment, make it better. That's it, that. So first, all right, I'm convinced and always have that my experience of myself that I don't want is there because that happened. I go, well, okay, so all right, maybe that is in fact connected to this whole consciousness. Well, all right, well, what about this experience of myself that I don't want? Well, I'm beginning to see that's ludicrous. How can I not? It's like saying I don't want the experience of myself is like saying I'm not going to breathe. Go ahead, let's do it together. Well, I don't want to breathe. I don't want my heart to keep going. When you say, I don't want the experience of myself, you are saying, I don't want. You can fill in like anything after that. I don't want. It's a small city somewhere in Minneapolis. I don't want. What? To be me. How can I not want to be me? Am I not me? Or is what I've always called me not me? That's the answer, because that's what we're looking at. I don't know who else to be other than me in that moment. And I'm going to show you something now, if you will pay as close attention as you can. So identifying with this, does that change anything? What about identifying with that? So identifying with the condition or any form of the consciousness that it reflects, neither one of those by themselves brings about a new beginning. Do we agree? And that I am dependent on knowing what happened that I don't want, and I'm also dependent on actually not wanting that experience, because out of it comes a new experience for myself downstream. Yeah. Yes or no? So this side being the event blamed, and that side the experience of not wanting it. The event blamed, that, this experience of myself, I don't want it. But in the action of being able to see these opposites, there is a moment that is as new as the moment of creation itself. And I'm going to tell you a little phrase. If it's not this, and it's not that, and by the way, that's an ancient teaching, the negation. Not this, not that. You've heard it before. So if it's not this, and it's not that, then what? This is where I always used to have fun. I go, here's the greatest secret in the... It is to see and to know I am this that is. I am this that is. Not that, not this. I am this that is. And that's it. That's right out of Scripture. Who shall I say sent me? I am. He didn't finish that. Because there's no way to finish something that embraces the opposites without bringing the mind into a polarity that creates this idea of knowing. But you say, I am this that is. Here's this experience. I am that, this that is. I am this that is. I am this experience that is the reflection of that moment. I am the reflection of that moment that is this experience. Not me having this experience, not that's producing it, just the pure understanding that I am this that is. No division. No mind that finds a problem and then finds the proof of it. No proof in pain that promises that change will, when you change that moment, something new will happen to you. When you suspect something like that, and I trust that some of you have to some extent, what happens? I can't go into thought about that. I can't. And I also know that I can't identify with the experience of not wanting to be what I am, because that's insanity. So everything comes to a singularity, doesn't it? And in that moment, what takes place? An epiphany. The experience of something that the mind can't create for itself. I am not separate from the moment, and I am not separate from the self that is reflected and stirred by that moment. In that split second of understanding, we are, to use words, related to the immensity of the moment. The immensity of the moment, the immensity of the revelation. You don't know it. These are words. I'm telling you, in your heart of hearts, what you want is to be in relationship to the immensity of revelation. Because I'm not divided. A moment of beauty is a moment of sharing in the immensity of the moment, in that which mind can't grasp, but that the whole of yourself can participate in. Because when the mind gets quiet like that, not because you've tried to quiet it, not because it's quieted by the promise of some time to come. It's become quiet because it's seen through the riot of these polar opposites as they're vacillating back and forth. It's quiet because it's recognizing that is not the problem, and this experience is a fake one because it belongs to the whole play of opposites. And suddenly, quiet. Blessed quiet, not manufactured quiet, not even a quiet that you can say is yours or that you want to keep, just quiet. Just the revelation of the wave across the bay as not being separate from the bay, nor you as the witness to it. So that the movement of the waters is not separate from the movement of the soul in which it's reflected. Just quiet, a singularity. And in that there is this immensity, and that immensity is peace. Because it transcends any words you will ever give to it. And that drives us crazy. I got to have words. I do. I got to have words. I have a word for everything. Do you not have a word for everything? and usually a lot of words for something, related to its immensity. Do you see what that means? It means that the immensity of that moment of creation, I'm not apart from it. But I separate myself from the beauty, the immensity of the divine. I separate it from myself every time I try to create for myself the immensity of a moment that I'll control, or the immensity of a self that I'll escape when I finally get situations handled. And here's the last part of this talk. In that immensity, something awaits that you cannot generate. And because in that immensity, there is humility. Humility born of understanding that you didn't create that immensity, and yet by some act of grace, you're a part of it. And you're part of its peace. You're part of its plan. Because the immensity is never not with you. God's life is never not unfolding. You believe it's your life in which you've given God a certain part when you need him to bring it into your pain. No, the presence of God's life, the immensity of this world that isn't divided up into this and that, the immensity of it is the peace. And being a part of it is what love is. Because you can't be a part of that immensity without sacrificing the self that wants to be its own immensity, that wants to be its own God, its own truth giver. So in that immensity, there's a humility. And in humility, bringing this to full circle, what do you think there is inherent in this humility? Surrender. Just pure surrender. And what are you surrendering to? You can't know what you're surrendering to. You just know the peace of giving your life over to the immensity of that moment that is always new. There is no moment of true surrender that isn't the beginning of something new, because what's being surrendered other than the pattern maker, than the chain making machinery called this mind? That's what surrender is. That's what epiphany is. Epiphany leads to surrender. Surrender is the sacrifice, not because you've chosen to do so, but because you see that's what I'm here to do. I'm actually intended to be a part of this, and I never knew it because I was always a part of that or a part of this or a part of that. Now the parts have come together, which is what this represents, by the way, when you see something like that. This actually represents surrender. Let's bring up the last key lesson, please, Eric. Read along with me. The conditions required for humility are as countless as the stars, but only an act of grace can create the humility that reunites us with the creator of their timeless radiance. The conditions required for humility are as countless as the stars. Do you understand there's no moment in which that's right out of the New Testament. Man went to the wedding and decided he wanted the top seat at the wedding. There's no moment that isn't a wedding. Every moment is a wedding. That's why it's always new. When you understand your relationship to the wedding, you don't try to get a seat that you think makes you special. You know it's special just to be a part of that wedding. So you take any seat you're given. Please, do you understand the meaning? Take any seat you're given. Why? Because if I take the top seat, as Christ said, then for sure someone's going to go along and say, hey, guy, I don't think that's where you get to sit, buddy. That's not your chair. You thought it was, but no, that's not only is that not your chair, you're out of here. Because you demanded in that moment a chair at the seat of heaven, and you realize now, as you're thrown out, that the heaven you thought you demanded a seat at was a heaven of your own making. And that's what hell is. Hell is the belief in this and that. Heaven is understanding they don't exist independent of each other. So the key lesson says the conditions required for humility are countless as of the stars. Have you had a moment yet? Have you had a sustained glimpse of yourself where you realize that you are the endless spoiler of all things good? No, I really mean it. That's what my mind does. But it doesn't say it's spoiling things. It says it's perfecting them. Well, nothing spoils a moment more than you trying to perfect it according to your idea of who and what things should be so that you can be you in that moment. So to feel any of this, to sense it in any moment, want it or not, and that's key. Not what I'm blaming, not this experience of myself, but to see them together. I am this that is. And then it just rests there. It's like the perfect stopping point, and it will be the stopping point of this talk. That's what everything's trying to bring you to. All the things that take place spiritually are trying to help you see, well, that happened if that hadn't happened, I swear to God, I would be a different person. Don't you say that to yourself? Because I am this way because of that. No, you're not this way because of that. You are this way because you believe in that, and that keeps the experience of that you don't want alive. To die to that is to be reborn. To be reborn is to make a new beginning moment to moment, because you are a part of what is always beginning anew. We'll take a break, have our Q&A following.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We're ready to do the Q&A. And I do see several names on the GoToWebinar that I've never seen before. And if you'd like to speak with Guy and you're on GoToWebinar, you can do it just by clicking on that little hand icon. It looks like this. Just click on that, and then I'll ask you to unmute yourself, and then you could speak directly to Guy. And then that will put you in a queue. So go ahead and start raising your hands now so we can start a good queue. And if you want to write a question, you can do that in the question box as well. And once again, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can write them in the chat box, and Kate behind the scenes will feed them to me, and we'll get going on that. So Guy, if you want to come in, we'll go ahead and get started if you're ready. Oh, look at that. Okay. We have 3 written questions. We don't have any hands in the queue yet, but let's start with the first of the written questions. Let me bring that over here. And it's from Skywalker. He's on YouTube, and he says, the I don't know is the scariest part. He or she says, I have hopes, but then I have fear of hope. Is having a hope a source of pain? How do I just let it be as it is? No resistance or expectations.
Hi, Skywalker. I'll answer in such a way I hope you'll
That's the way.
make space for it.
Thank you.
If I love something, do I have to hope in it? Or could it be that love is the answer to all things that are hoped for because it's the end of someone who feels they're separate from whatever life they imagine they should have? When there's hope in something, a time to come, the hope is because of an unseen ambition. You can't escape the ambition. It's built into this consciousness. It can only be transcended. It cannot ever produce what it promises. So if I have a love of something, Skywalker, the love is the fulfillment, not the time to come in which I hope I get what I want. I hope I become something. That's where the fear is. The fear is in the imagined time to come where I will be finally free of the experience of myself I don't want. I feel inadequate. I feel I'm not enough. I feel like people don't love me. I feel like the world is set against me. I have all these experiences constantly reinforced by conditions that I see as being responsible for the experience. It's just the opposite. The experience of self creates the condition it needs to validate itself. And it does so perfectly, incidentally. Gosh, Skywalker. I can't say that I don't know how frustrating it is to not understand. But I can say with great certainty that the only reason that a person lives without understanding is because that way they can validate and justify the pain they're in with a world, a God, a life that's beyond them. Nothing is beyond your understanding because God has created you to understand the whole of his life within yourself. Made in the image of God. Our hopes must not be in things seen, said St. Paul, but in things unseen. Why? Because the minute my hope is vested in something seen, there is the creator of what he is looking for, his dependency upon it, the attachment and the ultimate fear. A, what if conditions come that I can't get it? And B, what if I do get it and then something takes it from me? Look deeper. Maybe that'll be the answer I'll give to every question for the rest of my life. That would sure simplify things, wouldn't it? Just look a little more deeply. And you can't say, I can't, can you? Can you say, I can't? Or would you say, I feel like I can't, but the truth is I won't? And the truth is I won't, because if I really look deeper, I might see something that negates all of this suffering that I'm so used to identifying with. It's up to you. Stay with it, Skywalker. I'll be with you right to the end of this body anyway. I'm done.
All right, guy, we have a couple in the queue. We got Dwight and Tony. So we'll go first to Dwight. There you go, Dwight.
What is difficult for me is that things happen in business and they have to be, and they may be what you would consider monumental threats to the business. And, you know, trying to not be identified personally about being threatened, I mean, it's really difficult.
Yeah.
Say the least, I'm threatened all the time.
Yes, you are.
Something. And but I'm trying the best I can to look at the experience and not try to desperately seek an outcome, I guess. I mean, I just pursue as best I can.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm talking about? I mean, it's just real hard. What you're saying is great, but it's real difficult.
Love what you're saying, but not what it asked me to do.
Well,
So Dwight, no, just hang on a second, man. First of all, hi, Dwight. Nice to hear your voice.
thanks.
So Dwight, you can just answer true or not. Ready?
Yeah.
I walk into a restaurant, and instead of acknowledging me, the person putting people in their chairs turns their back on me with disdain. Is that a threat or not a threat to me? True or not?
Not.
Not true. So
No,
so when you are treated with disrespect, you don't feel like that's a threat to you.
No.
Oh, Dwight, God. Do you react? Dwight, do you have resistance when people don't treat you the way you want to be treated?
That's hard to say. I mean, I'm not talking in that realm. I'm talking about something like
No, you don't know what you're talking about, Dwight. I'm trying to help you see what you're talking about. You believe that there's a difference in threats. You believe that the threat of being disrespected and your resistance to that, because it runs against the image of yourself as someone who should be respected at all costs, sitting at the business table with your friends or at a board meeting, and somebody challenges your idea, you feel threatened. Don't you dare lie. You have no chance if you lie here. How do I know I'm threatened? Because I set myself back against you. I oppose you. I must defend myself. That's because I, in quotes, feel threatened by the waiter or by the person on my board of directors. That threat isn't just because of that condition. That threat creates the conditions, Dwight. So it doesn't matter from the least to the biggest. And let me add this. I run a foundation. I have employees, in quotes. Don't even like to use the word I think to myself all the time, well, we want to launch this new program. The funds are limited. How are we going to do this? And what does it mean? Because if that goes belly up, how am I going to take care of the people that have worked with me for years and years and years that I love? What am I going to do? And I can tell you that when that moment comes up inside of me, I always treat it the exact same way. My business is this moment, not the moment that's coming. And there's no problem in this moment. The threat may be seemingly like absolutely inescapable, but every threat is by its nature an existential threat to something I'm identified with. And even if it's something that I think I should be identified with, there's no right suffering over identification. End of story. So when I see there's no right suffering over whatever it is that I'm identified with, then I can take care of what I'm identified and start to separate myself from the suffering that's produced by being attached to an image of myself that shouldn't be in this situation. That's what you have to see, Dwight. You want an excuse to be afraid. God did not put the spirit of fear in you, Dwight. The spirit of fear belongs to something that was born in that body as Dwight was brought up into this world and told, this is what a good man is, this is what responsibility is. Yes, all of those things are true in that world. But in the world you're interested in entering, which incidentally you're interested in entering it because of the pain of the other world, we have to find that beautiful fine line where I'm able to do both at the same time and both properly because I'm not identified with an outcome. I'm not identified with protecting something, even though I must do all that I can to protect what I believe is right and best in the moment. But without suffering, that's the key. Can I give up Dwight and keep in place all that is right and necessary relative to what Dwight or Guy or whatever your name is created? It's right in line with what Skywalker was asking me. Did any of that fall on any part of you, Dwight? Are you still there?
Yes, it did. And that's what I'm trying to do with these situations when it's not, I mean, a lot of the situation isn't a personal attack. It's something that's happened with the business that I'm trying to say, okay, well, we can, don't have the reaction to it. We'll take care of it the best you can and go on.
No, Dwight, I'm not saying don't have a reaction. That'd be like saying to a refrigerator, don't be cold. That's the point, Dwight. The reaction doesn't prove responsibility. Your identification with it proves an irresponsible relationship to the moment. We believe reaction proves responsibility. It proves I'm asleep. I'm suffering. And I say it one more time. God forbid that your business, if you have to produce and provide for families and other people, your children, all the rest of that, although at a certain point I would just add, Dwight, by the time a kid reaches the 18, you should no longer be providing for them. I know people are still, never mind. There's a very fine difference, Dwight, and it must be seen not in the condition I blame for this reaction, but in realizing that this nature is attached to and identified with a certain sense of itself that is vested in the business, vested in my husband, vested in my wife, vested in my car, vested in my bank account, vested in my face, the way I look, vested in my mortality. And so it doesn't matter what it is that comes along and says, you know what, that isn't the problem. What's happening to your business, that's not the reason for your suffering. You're suffering because you don't want that to happen to your business, and you can't change what's happening to your business by suffering over it. In fact, the more you suffer over what might happen, the less capable you are of a creative response and a real responsibility to the moment. That's it. I can't say any more, Dwight. I hope that some of that gets through. You know I'm still here.
Okay.
Let's go next to Tony. Tony, you want to unmute yourself? There you go.
Hi there. Happy New Year, everyone. I just feel for Dwight because we have a similar situation recently. And, the reactivity is amazing when you feel threatened by contracts ending on a huge corporate level, and you feel like you're only a small cog in the wheel, and how can you say something without being obnoxious, So I basically thought to myself, okay, why am I feeling so reactive? And I ended up writing my boss, the CEO, and I said, this is corporate creep. And I explained what I meant, the legal terms and all that. And I said, I really hope that the powers that be in our corporation do some pushback here because it's illegal. It's not right. And I said, that's my 2 cents. And that's how I signed off. And I got a reply, and I was shocked beyond belief that he had heard me and even said, oh, I think that's $1. We definitely are. So he called my 2 cents a dollar. But I am with Dwight, that initial reactivity of which is a threat to our livelihood and all that is there. But actually, the reason I'm calling you, your grasshopper is calling you, is because that peace that surpasses all understanding, which is mere thought, which is basically the basis of your thought, of your talk today. That peace, why do we get that sense of peace? Is it a sense of it is done? Is it just like my little part in that whole that is enough? Is it that butterflies beat in the Pacific Ocean that is affecting the hurricane in America? I mean, what is that peace? Well, I can't label it, and I love it, but I just want to know, why do we feel that peace? What is your understanding of it?
I understand. No, this isn't my understanding of it, Tony. People fight over understanding. I don't understand it the way you do. Something is or it isn't. You see it or you don't see it. This is behind what Skywalker asked. This is behind what Dwight was just going through. It's behind every moment where, we call it corporate creep or just a creeping consciousness afraid of some condition on its way that it projects is going to be painful. In the end, everything that we suffer over is because we suffer over what is one day understood to be an imagined fear of death. There's not one thing that you suffer over that isn't an existential threat to the end of who and what you think you are. There isn't one problem that you have that you suffer over that isn't connected to the existential threat of the end of my continuity of who I am, what I've done, my business, my this and my that, my. The peace that passes understanding is when you get past the misunderstanding that you exist as a separate entity in this world in God's life. The peace that passes understanding is when the mind stops struggling to find its place and somehow keep it there. The peace that passes understanding is when the heart begins to recognize that its real responsibility is to ceaselessly surrender itself to another order of will, another order of beating, of another kind of rhythm. Because now you're not a wave apart from the ocean worrying that you're going to crash into the shore or that you might be absorbed into something you don't understand. You have surrendered understanding not because you want to, but because you see you never understood to begin with, nor did you ever have to understand what your mind tells you you have to understand if you want to protect this or that. I'm off.
All right, guy, let's go to a question from Jordan. And Jordan asks, I'm working with your 8-day attention course on Insight Timer, which is the Insight Timer app, which we have a guy has a course there. Anybody can go to that. But anyway, he's working with that. And he says, and part of that says, as goes my attention, so comes my experience. Does this work for outward activities like golf or something you're absorbed in it? I'm asking because my hobby is my job, and I'm in the activity more than 8 hours a day. As you said before to me, love is the reward. But should my attention constantly be on the act? Hope that makes some sense.
Well, I understand the question is well intended, but it's not really clear, Jordan. So I'll answer from a couple of different angles. I mostly enjoy playing golf. And I can tell you that what takes the joy out of the game isn't the effect of hitting a bad shot. It's the reaction to it. And when you have a negative reaction, you can't have a negative reaction without being tense and resisting the outcome of something. So I have a little phrase. It doesn't really help all the time, but it does bring me into a proper relationship with the moment prior to swinging the golf club. And it's simply this: what begins in tension ends in tension. What begins with being tense ends with being tense. There's no way around it. Because we're tense hoping to produce a better outcome, but the tension promises that we won't have a better outcome. So the more tense I am, the more I'm trying to achieve what my ambition is in hearts, meaning to be a good player. And the very intention to be a good player produces the opposite. So I need a new intention, one that isn't what's the word I want? Replaced? No, not replaced. Never mind. One that isn't overwritten by the mechanical intention of a consciousness that wants to achieve and succeed according to what it's identified with. It's an act of insanity to do the thing that you think is the best and get the worst from it, and then think somehow if I just double down on my tension, things will get better. It's crazy. But that's what the mind does. That's the pattern. That's why it never starts in a fresh place. Now, the next part of this, Jordan, is that every once in a while, in fact, it just happened yesterday, I got to a place where I thought, not the first time, by the way, this is a stupid game. And besides which, your body isn't suited to it. You've had too many injuries. You're never going to be able to accomplish what you think you're supposed to accomplish. But if you let that happen, which it does, and then you walk away believing that that conclusion is the proper answer to the moment you don't want, you're dead in the water. So instead of walking away, I decided that, what I'm doing doesn't work. I thought that before, but I've never really tried to do anything other than what I know to do. So I tried to do something that I've never done before, and lo and behold, that was what I was looking for. The next level of development. So as true on the course, so true with the consciousness. Because the course is the consciousness, and the consciousness produces the course, doesn't it? What course do you think you're on, whether you're swinging a club or a fist or a drumstick? It makes no difference. So Jordan, just can I do what I'm doing because that's what I'm given to do? Or must I continue to try to do something I believe that I've been given to do so I can give myself a sense of myself that I want? If you do what you're given to do, you will discover that in what you're given to do is the solution to the outcome you don't want from what you're doing. You'll see it yourself. It's built into it. This is what Rumi meant by the antidote is the venom is in the antidote's in the venom. That's what it means. The antidote to a moment that you don't want is in finally recognizing the moment you don't want, you're part and parcel of creating. And when you see that, you stop creating it to whatever extent you do. And when you stop creating it, lo and behold, you're there in another order of creation to see something you couldn't see before because you were too busy being blinded by what you're identified with. That's the best I can answer.
Okay, Guy, we're at 5 minutes past the hour. We have one in the queue and one more question. We could probably end with that.
You know what? Before we go on, I want to make a note for a new book that I'm going to write. It's called True Confessions of a 16 Handicap. And going up. Okay, Doug, back to you.
Well, that's better than a 25 handicap.
Well, that's
so
true. And someone would say that and say, oh, if only I remember that. Boy, if I could just get, like into the teens. But it's just the way it is. Over to you, Douglas.
All right, let's go to Raul, and then we'll go to Susanna's written question. Here's Raul. Raul, can you unmute yourself? Click on that little red microphone. Oh, maybe he didn't want to be in the queue. I'm going to try to find him. He might have hit the wrong thing.
Go to Susanna while we're waiting for Raul to come back, if he does.
Okay, let's do that. Susanna has a question. How does one walk out of this labyrinth we create for ourselves?
That's the beauty of it, Susanna. You're out of it when you stop creating it. That's it. You're not walking out of something. You're just no longer participating in inventing it. You're not walking out of a life you don't want. You just see the life you don't want. You've been making, you stop making it. All of a sudden you have a different life. But it can't be a life that you recognize. And that's the, and in that, what would Shakespeare say? And there's the rub, or something like that. Yeah. And there's the rub. There's the friction that this mind has with its dependency on its own creations. That's the only rub there is, incidentally. That's all, folks? Oh, please, Eric, come on up. Eric is here. You can't see him, and that's hard to miss. Hard to miss, but here he is.
In grief, it feels like there's almost a physical object in here
Yes.
that is very important and should not be avoided.
He's just taking a moment to collect himself.
I did look to Tolstoy, not wisdom chat, but something else.
Yeah.
He said that grief has its own laws and its own time. And he said something that very much applies to this talk, because you could substitute the word grief for a lot of things. He said something along the lines of grief avoided returns as fear. And the experience of yourself avoided
Yes.
returns as fear.
Yes.
Death avoided returns as fear. That's it.
Yes.
That's all I have.
What a marvelous thing. It doesn't mitigate the grief, but it adds a dimension to it that the mind that's grieving can't add by itself. I'm able to see, for instance, that this thing feels like a solid object. I know there's no solid object called grief, but I can also recognize that what I call a solid object might be a hole. And whatever that hole's filled with may be something that is being filled in for me by something I don't understand, so that it feels solid and impassable. All of these things, Eric, I can't tell you how important it is. I really can't, all of you. You're satisfied with the answers to questions your mind asks, instead of seeing the necessity to be dissatisfied with answers that substantiate your suffering. Then something new can happen, because for the first time, I'm not part of the pattern. I'm looking at it. I'm not participating in the suffering inherent in reliving something. I'm looking at something that wants to relive this. For what purpose? I'm looking at all of it. I'm not coming to a conclusion. You're dead. I'm just looking. I'm just looking. But I'm looking not at that and not at this. I'm looking at the whole thing, and I'm questioning it. I said just last week, how did you get to the point where you have no questions whether or not that which is using you should have the right to use you? Grief doesn't use a human being. Grief is a natural expression of the end of something, and then the experience of something that is ended in you, looking for a way in its own way to make peace with something that is gone. And then you realize it's not my job to make peace with something that's gone. Peace is inherent in the moment. I'm just apart from it because I want something from it, or I don't want something from it in the end when it comes to grief. I know that I don't speak well enough of these things, but I can just tell you that you can know the immensity of an unimaginable freedom in the midst of grief. In the midst of some desire that says this has to be that way or you have to be like this, in the midst of that impatience or pain, you can catch a glimpse of the opposites that create that suffering. And the minute you catch a glimpse of those opposites, there is an epiphanous moment. And the epiphany is that the you that is going through all of that is actually complicit with what it is going through, and then it just stops. And then there's another action. But it's not an action of trying to prepare for tomorrow or figure out what happened yesterday. It's an action of being a participant in what you are actually intended to be a participant in, which is the birth and death of yourself, the rebirth of yourself moment to moment, as only the light can reveal that possibility. I guess that's all.
Oh, yeah, Raul, let's come back. Should we try him once more?
Sure.
Okay, here he is, hopefully. Raul, can you unmute yourself? Make sure you hit the microphone and nothing else. We're not voting well here, so
It's all right.
we'll end with that, Guy. I'll give it
Yeah,
back to
it's
you.
fine. And Roel and I will be together in another time when the computer world and our understanding of it merge into a single conversation. Goodbye.